Before I die, I will tell my kids stories of how the world once was, long before they were born. A world before the war with the Hollywood machine. I remember a glorious world that included the Terminator and Terminator 2. It was beautiful. Filled with laughter and hope for new Terminator films in the future. It was a world I knew. By the time my kids were born, this was all gone. Genisys, a film that was meant to save the franchise. It was meant to save us from salvation. But that's not what happened. On the 21st of June 2015, Genisys released and made the decision that the Terminator and T2 shouldn't even exist. Hello everybody, let's talk about Terminator Genisys. But before we get into that, let's look at the franchise as a whole to see how we got here. Terminator is based on the idea of an AI rising up and deciding humans are not worth living and taking a very human solution to the problem by nuking us. We don't all die in this nuclear attack, and we create a thing called the Resistance to fight the machines. The machines, after unsuccessfully trying to kill us off, decide to go with a new tactic of creating infiltration units that happen to look like Arnold fucking Schwarzenegger to infiltrate the Resistance. Who doesn't notice that man mountain walking around and thinks suspiciously of it is beyond me, but apparently they did quite okay. Even with that, we humans eventually win the war and the machines have one last ditch effort before they're destroyed. They decide to create a time machine and go back to the past and kill Sarah Connor, John Connor's mum, before John is even born. I could get into what happens next, but that means I'm going to be talking about two classic films, and we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about a train wreck. Genisys follows the story of Kyle Reese, this one, not this one, going back in time to save Sarah Connor, this one, not this one, from the Terminator, this one, not this one, because a version of this one went back in time to protect Sarah when she was a child. Confused yet? I know I am. Once Kyle ends up in the past, in 1987, he realises things are a little bit different with Sarah having a Terminator, there being a T-1000 which Kyle doesn't even know about yet, being there, and now we realise the timelines have changed. And he decides to tell everybody about the changes that he's having visions of, which makes them make a time machine and go to 2017 to stop his visions of the future happening. Before I can get into my issues with Genisys, we need to break down all of the Terminator timelines very quickly. Luckily for you guys, I spent a few hours making this diagram of the whole franchise so far. Timeline number 1 is the possible first timeline before time travel was a thing. So John Connor was still born in 1987. Judgment Day happened in 1995. And that's that timeline. Really, we get to 2029, time travel starts. Cool. Now we'll lead on to the original timeline. Kyle Reese goes back to 1984 to save Sarah Connor from a Terminator, the T-800, who's been sent back to assassinate her before John's born to stop the Resistance ever happening. During the course of that film, Sarah and Kyle fall in love and get down to business. And that's when we find out that John Connor's father is actually Kyle Reese. That happens and they eventually defeat the Terminator that's went back to kill them. We now move on to 1995, where the machines send back another Terminator to try and kill John, this time as a child. This Terminator is the T-1000, who is our big liquid boy who can look like anyone as long as they're kind of roughly the same height and weight and all that nonsense. The Resistance, realising that a human just won't be good enough for this, sends back a reprogrammed T-800 to protect John. More than likely because Arnie is the biggest movie star on the planet at this time. Just a thought. This leads to Sarah, the T-800, and John going to find Cyberdyne Systems, which was the precursor to Skynet, because that company found all the old Terminator bits from 1984 and was researching the technology. During the events of the film, they destroy Skynet before it becomes active, before it becomes even a thing. So they do what the machines were trying to do and destroy it before it happens. Let's crack on to 2007, where the machines try again to kill Kate Brewster, John's wife. Because at this point, the machines are basically gangsters. It's like, if I can't get you, I'm going to get your missus. You know? This is when we find out, during the events of this film, that Judgment Day was going to happen regardless. It's just moved forward in the timeline. In this continuity, and the continuity at this point, Skynet becomes active in 2007 and starts Judgment Day. This will lead us right on to Salvation, which is based in the future and the war, so I don't really need to cover much what happens there. Then we get to 2029, where we create the loop and we come all the way back through and we do it again. And that creates this infinite loop of this always should happen. Now we get to the Genisys timeline, which by all rights follows the same thing, but some very definitive changes happen. So first off, Sarah gets attacked in 1973 as a kid by a T-1000, and then a mysterious person in the future sends back a T-800 to help her, and we never find out who that is, which is a bit of a stickler for me. Like, if we don't know who sent you back, how are we meant to know how you knew about this attack happening in the first place? But that's not the point. So that means Sarah now has the Terminator, who tells her everything about the future. Now we jump ahead to 1987 with Sarah and the T-800 killing the original T-800 as he arrives. Now Kyle Reese shows up and gives a big exposition about how he can see the future.
I can see the future!
And they go from 1987 to 2017 to fight John Connor, who's evil, and change everything. They defeat Skynet, they defeat Genisys, and as a happy ever after, we're all caught up with the timelines. Time travel and jumping about timelines seems par for the course for the Terminator franchise. It's what the whole thing is based on. So why is it Genisys hurts me so much? Well, it's one moment that changes way too much for me, that stops things for me, that it's when they kill the original Terminator in 1987. Because in doing so, there is no The Terminator movie, and there's no T2. And I know what you're thinking, but Chris, those films are out there, they still exist, so why does it annoy you? Because of canon. If you have to think about it logically, Genisys is technically now the first film, because it goes the furthest back. And when we do get to 1987, it's the same cast of characters. Yes, different actors, but it's the same cast of characters that are in 1987. So by all rights, this is the first time that they get to 1987.
Listen to me, Reese, everything's changed. The 1984 John sent you to, it no longer exists.
No, this is all wrong, all right?
This jumping about and taking the Terminator and Terminator 2 out of the canon might be okay if the film was fine, but the film isn't. The film starts again and again and again because they're jumping through time. So every time jump is a new beginning for them. So we get a lot of exposition. I found this film's biggest flaw was the lack of emotional weight when it comes to the characters. When you look at T2 and compare it to this, because they follow the same kind of idea of let's destroy Skynet before Skynet becomes a thing. In Terminator 2, they set up something lovely with the idea of having a machine be a protector. And why does it work in T2 and not work in Genisys? Emotional weight and time spent on it. In Genisys, we get Sarah Connor getting saved as a kid by Arnie. The next time we see them, Sarah's all grown up, Arnie is called Pops, and she says, "This is my protector, he's the guy." In Terminator 2, when John gets his T-800, his Arnie, there's been groundwork laid there since the first film. In the first film, we get the iconic speech.
It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with. It doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear. And it absolutely will not stop. Ever. Until you are dead.
And that's what we know. That's what Sarah knows. That's what Sarah sees. So when we hit T2 and John gets his machine, he's been kind of taught that. But figures out that this one has to protect him. Now, we get a relationship built with him through a whole film, whose groundwork's been laid in a film previously of what a machine could be given different programming, and how much a young boy looks for a father figure, and getting to watch Sarah needing to adjust to realise that this machine is a better father to John than any man that she's had in her life. And all those parts combined created an action film that was so emotionally heavy and deep that it had no right being, considered it's a film about robots punching each other. Genisys didn't have any of that. What Genisys has is exposition. They do the tell don't show when everybody wants show don't tell. And that's where I have issues with Genisys in general. When it comes to time travel, there's no right or wrong answer, sadly, because time travel's nature fucks up continuity. But there's something about the way Genisys went about it really irked me. Taking away classic films for the sake of shock value is too much. So, Genisys, you are the bottom of the barrel of Terminator films, sadly. I got told I ended the last video a bit abruptly, so here is me not abruptly ending the video. Thank you all for watching. Until next time, I'll see you then.